guys, we make you a promise, and that is you saw it first on the Fast Lane car. And today you're going to see it first, the very first all-electric Porsche Taycan. And here it is. And you may be wondering, why am I standing in front of Niagara Falls? And that's because Porsche flew me out here to see the car being unveiled. It's being unveiled at the same time here in Canada, along with Germany and China. And of course, we got the information about 12 hours ahead of time. But because you're watching TFL, you are watching this in real time when the car is being unveiled and you're getting the information first. Let's start by talking about some interesting numbers. Now you must be wondering, how quick is a Porsche Taycan from 0 to 60 or 0 to 100 if you're here in Canada? Well, Porsche says that the Turbo S, now keep in mind there are two models, the Turbo and the Turbo S, will do 0 to 60 in 2.6 seconds, which by the way is as fast as a Tesla Model S in ludicrous mode. But there's a lot more information that we know about the car, including its top speed, so let's get right to it. So do you say Porsche or Porsche? Because, well, the name of the vehicle is just as confusing. If you read it, it sounds like Taycan, but Porsche says it's Taycan. Let's get to the important numbers. The Porsche Taycan Turbo S version, you know, the expensive one, and I'll talk about the price in a second, can generate up to 750 horsepower of power in combination with launch control and overboost, while the plain old Taycan Turbo produces 670 horsepower. Now that means that the Turbo S will accelerate from 0 to 60 in 2.6 seconds, while the regular old Taycan Turbo without the S can complete that same sprint in 3 seconds. Now, Porsche says that the Taycan is the first production electric vehicle with a system voltage of 800 volts instead of the commonly used 400 volts in other electric cars. Now, this means that under ideal conditions, the charging time from 5 to 80% state of charge is just 22 minutes with a maximum charging power or peak of up to 270 kilowatts. The overall capacity of the 800 volt high voltage battery is 93.4 kilowatts. Now, a Tesla Model S has a battery of about 100 kilowatts. Of course, that is not confirmed since Tesla does not provide exact numbers. The Taycan is, of course, an all-wheel drive car with two electric motors, one in the front and one in the back. And unlike a Tesla Model S, or actually any other Tesla, the Taycan now comes with a 2-speed transmission installed on the rear axle. It's an innovative development by Porsche, or so Porsche claims. First gear lets the Taycan prioritize acceleration from a standing start, while second gear, with its long gear ratio, ensures high efficiency and equally high power reserves while traveling at high speeds. Now, Porsche says that up to 90% of everyday braking is performed by the electric motors alone. So, Porsche also claims that the best-in-class all-wheel drive control of the two electric motors lets the system recoup up to 265 kilowatt of power, which they say is significantly higher than its competitors. Of course, this wouldn't be a Porsche if it didn't have different drive modes, and there are 4 drive modes available. There is Normal, Sport, Sport Plus, and Range. I assume Range means, well, that's the eco mode that's going to be not a lot of fun to drive. Porsche also says that you can individually calibrate the system as required in individual mode. So there you go. I think if I'm driving this car, I'd have it in Sport Plus all the time. If you've been watching or reading the news recently, you'll note that Tesla has announced that the Tesla Model 3 is now available with a completely leather-free interior. Well, not to be outdone, the Taycan is also now available as an option with a completely leather-free interior for the first times. And Porsche says that the interiors are made from innovative recycled materials. In other words, they're leather-free. Now I'm reading from the press release, and it says, the cockpit signals the start of a new era of interior design at Porsche with its clear structure and completely new architecture. Basically, the freestanding curved instrument cluster, which is 10.9 inches of infotainment display, is combined with an optional passenger display to form an integrated glass band of black panel look. Now, if you don't like using a lot of buttons, Porsche says the number of classic hardware controls such as switches and buttons has been greatly reduced. Instead, just like Hey Mercedes, you can now start using the Porsche voice control function, which responds to the command Hey Porsche, or do you say Hey Porsche? The great thing about electric cars is that they don't have an engine. They have two small motors, which leave space in the front for a frunk and in the rear for a traditional trunk. Now, of course, Tesla calls their front compartment a frunk, whereas Porsche calls it a front compartment and says it has a capacity of 2.8 cubic feet, with the trunk having a capacity of 12.9 cubic feet. So for all you non-Porsche types, you might want to fast forward a little bit because we're going to speak Porsche. So for all you Porsche files, the new Taycan comes with PASM, or Porsche Active Suspension Management, which is of course electronic damper control, as well as the optional Porsche Dynamic Chassis Control Sport, PDCCS, electromechanical roll stabilization system including Porsche Torque Vectoring Plus, or PTV Plus, and of course all-wheel drive and air suspension. Of course, I'm wondering why Porsche chose to make the new Taycan a four-door sedan. There is a crossover coming, and there of course is also an all-electric Porsche Macan coming. But why lead with a four-door sedan when sedans aren't really selling? Well, that's something that we'll have to ask Porsche. Now, let's talk about the important numbers, and of course that is price and top speed, because both are extremely high. The base turbo rides on 20-inch, according to Porsche, Taycan Turbo Aero wheels, while the more powerful and more expensive Turbo S runs on 21 Mission E design wheels. Now, if you recall, the Mission E was the prototype that Porsche unveiled about 4 years ago, which actually looks extremely similar to the production car. Now, overall length is 195 inches for both, with a wheelbase of 114. Height, 54 inches, and track width, 67 inches. All right, let's start with price. The Taycan Turbo will start with an MSRP of $150,900 USD. MSRP at launch will be $153,310. If you want to get the big boy Taycan Turbo S, and yes, I know there's no turbo in the car. It's just Porsche's way of signifying that I suppose the car has a direct lineage to the 911 Turbo and that it's fast. Anyway, the Taycan Turbo S will start at $185,000 or $187,610 at launch. Now, both of these have a top speed of 161 miles an hour, and of course the two biggest numbers that you're probably the most curious about, and that is MPGE and range, have not yet been released. The press release says TBD. However, we do know that the curb weight of the Taycan is 5,132 pounds, whereas the Turbo S is 5,121 pounds, with the GVWR being 6,349 or 6,327. And those numbers, of course, are important because, well, weight is the enemy of speed and efficiency. However, the car does have an astonishing drag coefficient of 0.22 if you're looking at the Turbo, or 0.25 if you're looking at the Turbo S. And for all of you fans of drag racing, we do have quarter mile times. The Turbo will do the standing quarter mile using launch control in 11.1 seconds. And of course, the more expensive and more powerful Turbo S will do that same quarter mile in 10.8, according to Porsche. Now, Teslas on the track are right around that same time with ludicrous mode. So I got to tell you, I can't wait to see a first-time matchup between a Taycan and a Tesla Model S in ludicrous mode. It should be crazy close. Now, if you guys want to get a lot more information about the car, maybe get a deep dive into what makes it tick, well, head on over to TFL Car in a couple hours. Well, I'll have a complete report from the actual unveiling, because while you're watching this, we're editing that video as we speak. As always, this is Roman saying thanks for watching. Remember, check out tflcar.com for more news, views, and of course, you saw it first, the brand new all-electric, very first all-electric Porsche Taycan unveiling. See you guys soon. Ciao.